question. I recently went through an episode where there was very large movement of energy, sound, emotion, and physicality, kriya. While in that process, I was aware of three aspects at play. There was the experience of energy, movement, sound, and emotion that was flowing through the body. There was a totally still observer that appeared to encompass that which was happening. And there was also what I guess I would call the self. It was an aspect that was not the experience and not the awareness. This process of having the awareness or a witness inside has been with me since I was a child. However, this delineation between the experience and the self is only now emerging. In the past, it was as if the experience would consume both self and often awareness at times of intensity. Now they seem to be occurring in concert with each other. Oh, I'm not sure what that means. It could be an error in spelling. Not they seem to be occurring in concert with each other. Or maybe that's a poetic expression, I beg your pardon. What is this? Is this what you refer to as seer, seeing, seen? Or is there anything else I should know regarding these occurrences? Well, first of all, in response to, there was this totally, what you said earlier in the first paragraph, there was a totality or totally still observer that appeared to encompass that which was happening. And there was also what I would guess I would call the self. It was an aspect that was not the experience and not the awareness. I want you to be very clear about it, because otherwise you might enter the murky waters here. There's no such thing as the self and then experience and awareness. Okay? And let's go through it very slowly, because this is very important to understand. Because soon as we begin to think that there is the self, and then there is somehow awareness simultaneously can be perceived. Awareness is the self. You see? The self is awareness. And you referring here to, your question ends with seer, seeing and seen. Obviously in reference to many expositions that are out there where I have been expounding on the nature of experience itself, illustrating it with the classical Vedic perspective known as Samhita of Rishi Devata Chandas. In other words, Samhita stands here for togetherness. It's a Sanskrit word that simply translates as togetherness, something which is together, always together. Samhita of Rishi Devata Chandas. Rishi stands for seer, Chandas stands for that which is being seen, and Devata stands for seeing, experience itself. So they are always together, so there is this unity of seer, seeing and seen. But in all these cases, it's all the self. You see, all this is awareness. Seer, seeing and seen is all awareness. It is awareness that manifests itself literally as that. And I spoke about it recently at the Science and Non-Duality, I think during the workshop, where I picked that theme to illustrate how the self expresses itself from the singularity of the self, from the oneness of the self, and from its inherent quality as being consciousness bliss, because awareness by its very nature is eternal. It's why it's called being itself. it's eternal being, it's conscious. So it's literally being, consciousness, bliss, and it's ever blissful. So it's ever present, ever conscious, ever blissful. The very meaning of the Sanskrit Sat Chit Ananda. Sat Chit Ananda is known as the substratum of consciousness itself, the substratum of awareness, substratum of creation. Everything unfolds, literally, proceeds and expands and springs forth out of that field. The field of unity. The unified field, as the science calls it today, as the quantum science often refers to, the unified field, the Godhead, the Self. So awareness as the Self expresses itself through Sat Chit Ananda, which in turn expresses itself as will, knowledge and action, which in turn expresses itself as unity of seer, seeing and seen. But at no time, seer as an observer, seeing as the process of observation, or that which is being seen, in other words, an object, cease to be the self. It is the self at all times. I hope that is very clear to you. It has to be very clear from the start. Because then we are building on a good ground and we can sleep well. Even when we wake up, we can still sleep well, you see? So, seer, seeing and seen are not something that stands somehow in opposition or somehow perplexed qualities of awareness. No. The observer is the self. Seeing is the self. An object is the self. Cannot be otherwise. Otherwise we fragment reality, but reality is not fragmented. Reality is always in union. There is always union, even on the level of the disunion. You see? There may be a perception of disunion, which we call a misperception, but there is always that union. So in response to your question, let's make it very clear that what you perceive as the self somehow, an experience, an awareness, it's simply that what perhaps being perceived, but it's being perceived by nothing other than your own awareness. It's all illumined by the same light, and that light is your own awareness. That light is the self. Everything is illumined by the self. The Samhita of Rishi Devata Chandas do not act in autonomy. The togetherness of seer, seeing and seen do not act in autonomy. It's a beautiful, beautiful expression of the ground of consciousness, where the Sat Chit Ananda expresses itself as seer, seeing and seen. You see? So anything where the identification may take place, it's still the self. Where the self is identified with the seer, it's the self. Whether the self is identified with the seeing, it's the self. Where the self is identified with the object of perception, it's still the self. And that is then known in unity. In unity consciousness, all this is very, very simply and beautifully brought together. The Samhita of Rishi Devata Chandas are being perceived for what they are, the ground of consciousness, Sat Chit Ananda. The unity of seer, seeing and seen are being perceived as the being consciousness bliss. This has to be understood even now, however tentatively on that intellectual level, which will give you a proper picture rather than a fragmented picture. Okay? So I hope this somehow brought more clarity to that.